Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Rhea Racho. I'm the Program and Policy Coordinator for the Hepatitis B Foundation, and I manage the justB Storytelling Project. Thank you all for joining us today. Before we begin, I'm just going to review a few housekeeping items and let you know how you can participate in the webinar today. First, if you are experiencing any issues with your computer audio, there is an alternate call-in option, which is noted on the screen. And you can also find this call-in number on your GoToWebinar control panel under the heading Audio. Please note that all attendees are in listen-only mode and will be muted throughout the presentation. Next, please note that at any time during the presentation, you can submit questions using the question box in the control panel. We will be reviewing these as they come in, and we'll have time at the end of the presentation for Q&A. And lastly, please note that this webinar is being recorded. You will receive an email with a link to view and share this recording within the next few days. So now I'd like to turn it over to Ryan to kick things off.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to add my welcome to today's webinar. My name is Ryan Clary. I'm the Executive Director of the National Viral Hepatitis Roundtable. And I would like to thank the Hepatitis B Foundation and Rhea for co-hosting the webinar with us and all of their work putting this together. I have the pleasure of hearing several of the justB speakers in July at the Hepatitis B United Summit, the Hep B United Summit, and I was extremely moved by the stories and immediately knew I wanted to have an opportunity to share information about this program with NVHR members and partners. One thing I've learned in my years of working in both HIV and viral hepatitis is that those most impacted, telling their stories is a highly effective way of reducing stigma and educating others. The justB program is a powerful way of reaching these goals while developing patient leadership. Having lost a loved one to hepatitis B myself, I'm thrilled that we will hear from two of these leaders today. Today, we will learn more about the Model justB program and hear from two leaders in the hepatitis B community who bravely tell their story to increase awareness and promote testing, immunization, and treatment. And I will now hand it back to Rhea, who will explain the justB program in more detail.
Great, thank you, Ryan. So to start off with an overview of the campaign, what is the justB campaign? It is a national multilingual public health campaign that we created to try to help put a face on the problem of hepatitis B. It features true personal stories from people across the country who have been affected by the disease. And to build the campaign, the Hepatitis B Foundation partnered with APCHO, the Association of Asian Pacific Community Health Organizations, and Story Center, which is a nonprofit organization based in Berkeley, California. And I will talk more about Story Center in a couple of moments. I also wanted to acknowledge the generous funders who helped make the justB Storytelling Project possible. They include Arbutus Biopharma, Dynafx Technologies, and Gilead. So the goals of the campaign, overall, we really just wanted to make the voices of everyday people who have been affected by hepatitis B a bigger focus of our prevention and advocacy efforts. And that's because we have learned that engaging community members and sharing their personal stories about the obstacles to hepatitis B screening, prevention, and care is essential in strengthening our efforts to overcome those obstacles. So our specific goals are just through this campaign and through the sharing of stories are to increase awareness about hepatitis B, to help decrease any stigma or discrimination associated with it, to help promote testing, vaccination, and linkage to care, and to advocate for individuals who are living with or at risk of hepatitis B. And on top of that, so those are kind of the goals for the public, but also for the participants, we want to be able to, after they've contributed their stories and worked with us on creating a video, we also want to provide ongoing support to them. So we have training, resources, and different speaking opportunities that we engage our storytellers in so that they can continue to be champions of hepatitis B related issues. Next, before we introduce the storytellers and share their videos with you, I wanted to take some time to explain the idea behind digital storytelling, which was the process we used to create the videos. So first, with our partners, APCHO and Story Center, we collaborated on conducting initial outreach and recruiting potential participants who would be interested in sharing their story about hepatitis B. We then coordinated 2 digital storytelling workshops that were facilitated by Story Center. And as I mentioned, I was going to talk a little bit more about them. So they are an organization that has been around for more than 20 years, and they were a pioneer in the global digital storytelling movement. So they have an expertise in providing in-person workshops, online trainings, webinars, and they've conducted projects with organizations, not just in the US, but they've done many global projects as well. And all with the idea that storytelling is a great way to strengthen public health and advocacy efforts. So their process, the workshop that they facilitate, it brings together small groups of people for a few days where they're guided through the process of selecting a specific story that they want to tell and creating a short video or digital story. And the general agenda or flow of the workshop is we bring everyone together, people who we've talked to, we kind of review the stories in advance for people who are interested, and we help them get started thinking about what they're comfortable sharing, knowing that these videos will be part of a public campaign. And so during the workshops, the first thing that we do is we let everyone share their story, just verbally, unscripted, whatever they feel comfortable sharing. And then throughout the workshop, together with the facilitators, the trained facilitators from Story Center, and with the other participants, we work together to help everyone narrow in on a specific experience or story that they want to focus on. And we help them develop a first-person narrative script, and then they record those in their own voice, and they receive some training on how to edit the videos if there's time, so that they have a hands-on opportunity to help select what images and music and other visuals go into their video. So the workshops overall are very hands-on and participatory, and having it done in the group environment, there's one-on-one time, but there's also the time where you're sharing with the rest of the group. And we found that really allows the participants to find connections with other people who have a similar or relatable story, and they're able to build relationships throughout the workshop and even gain insight about their own experiences by listening to the experiences of other people. And then following the workshops, the Story Center team takes care of all the post-production editing and adding final touches like music or subtitles. And Story Center also helps us in providing this follow-up training for the storytellers in preparation for sharing their stories publicly. And the next thing before we move on to the actual videos is just we wanted to give an overview of how we've been promoting and distributing the stories so far. So we're still in the first year of the justB project, preparing for the second year, but after the 2 workshops that we held in January and March of this year, we spent time, as I mentioned, working with Story Center on the final editing and preparing a distribution plan for the videos, and we released them all at the same time in May in conjunction with Hepatitis Awareness Month. So the campaign sort of officially launched on May 1st with a press release and with all the videos being made available online on our website and on YouTube. And since then, we've featured 1 story per month on our website, in our newsletters, on social media. And that way, So we wanted all the videos to be available at the same time, but then we wanted to go back and feature each one at a time to give it a bit of a spotlight and to highlight some key themes or messages within each one. We've been doing some national and local media outreach, including some targeted outreach with ethnic media outlets, because some of our storytellers, we were able to do videos in a second language. And so if we were able to have a translated version, then we've tried to place those videos and promote them in language to specific audiences or media outlets. We've also had great success bringing in these videos and our storytellers in person for advocacy events. We've referenced the videos and people's stories in our policy work and in some of our materials that we bring to congressional meetings and congressional briefings. And then one thing that some of our partners have started working on, but that we really want to build out more, are community level screenings and events where we can support storytellers doing events in their local community and partnering with hepatitis organizations at the local level to do awareness events and to screen their videos. We've also had some ongoing partnerships with CDC and with an initiative called Shot by Shot, which also is a collection of videos of stories about vaccine preventable diseases. So we've been able to find other places where sharing our videos have been useful, and we've been able to cross over into different audiences, which has been great in distributing the stories more widely. And then if you go to our website, hepb.org/justb, you'll find a discussion guide that was created to help whenever organizations or individuals are interested in screening videos or just learning more about them. We have a discussion guide that goes through and provides information about each person's story and has some key takeaways, key questions that can be asked, and also has the full transcript for each one. And some of our other promotional materials just include postcards that we bring to events, and we have posters that we've used in receptions and exhibits to showcase the many different perspectives and the diversity of the communities that are affected by hepatitis B. And a couple of other things that aren't on the slide, but right now we're working on year 2 prep and recruiting for our next phase of workshops so that we can continue adding stories to our collection. We also have a plan for evaluating the entire program, which had included a post-workshop survey and interviews of our storytellers. And then later on next year, we're hoping to compile more data and analyze the actual audience reach and impact to see how viewing the videos have either increased awareness or helped break down any stigma associated with the disease. Okay, and then we just have this slide. The next one kind of shows the events that I was talking about. You can see on the top row, a lot of it, we had storytellers who were able to participate in advocacy events in DC to visit with their congressional representatives as part of a Hep United Hill Day that was in July. We've had storytellers come in person and speak on panels, and then quite a bit of media coverage. There's a couple of snapshots there of some media coverage that we've gotten. So I think I'll stop there so that we can actually meet the 2 storytellers today who have joined us, but I will let Ryan introduce our first story.
Great, thank you for that great overview of the program. So it's my honor to introduce our first storyteller, who is Dai Vu. Dai works in public health in Minneapolis. She and her sister participated in the first justB digital storytelling workshop this past January, and we will watch her video and then hear from Dai.
For 3 years, my alarm goes off every day at 8 a.m. I don't bother to change my clothes. I throw my grandma coat over my PJs and walk the block and a half to my dad's to give him his insulin and make sure he takes his meds and is okay. At noon, my alarm goes off again for the same routine, then again at 6 and again at 9. For these 3 years, I took him to all his appointments and stay with him when he's hospitalized every few months. He's always tired and gets thinner and thinner. My brother has school and my sister has work, so caretaking falls to me and Mom. Before the diagnosis, he had been silent about his pain. How could I miss the weight loss, the fatigue, the tremors? How could the mainstream public health community have been so silent about this disease that I knew almost nothing about it as a public health worker? He is treated with radiation, but decides against surgery. He never complains. I learned how prevalent Hep B and liver cancer are in our Asian communities. I look online for resources in Vietnamese and support groups for people who don't speak English. I find nothing. The cancer spreads to his bone in 2015. More alarms, medications, radiation, chemo that doesn't work, and then 3 months in the hospital surrounded by us. We celebrated his 100-day memorial mass this past weekend. For us, 3 years is lucky. If we had talked sooner, if people knew more about this, he could have lived for so many more years. But for us, 3 years is lucky. I don't regret a single day. Just be there.
Thank you, Dai, and we look forward to your comments.
Hi, everyone. Like John said, my name is Dai Vu. Our family lives in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Our family of 5 have been in America since 1981. So we've been here quite a long time, and we settled in Minneapolis, and we've stayed here since. About 3 years ago, when I was still working in public health at American Cancer Society, we found out that my father was diagnosed with liver cancer. And we were pretty stunned. We didn't know anything about it, and we should have. And we didn't hear anything about it, and we should have. The cancer that people talk a lot about in Minnesota in terms of screenable has always been breast, cervical, and colon. And that was my work. So I was really shocked and quite angry at myself. And unfortunately, that lack of knowledge really hurt our family. So my dad was diagnosed with stage 3 liver cancer. He went through different types of treatment. Like the video said, he didn't do surgery, he did radiation, and then chemo. We were really proud of him because he was so strong and he fared well against radiation, and we thought things were going okay until spring of 2016 when we found out that the liver cancer had spread to his bone, pretty widespread to all different types of, he started having pain in his shoulder, so it spread to his clavicle, started having it in his legs, so spread to his long leg bones, and then the last stage was pain in his neck and head, so they were afraid it may spread to his brain. So our family, I took time off to take care of him, and unfortunately he didn't he didn't make it past the fall of 2016. And when the funny thing is, when I was there at the Story Center, we had just finished his 100-day ceremony. In our Vietnamese culture, we have the funeral, the 100-day, and then the 1 year. This past Saturday was his 1 year memorial mass, And so I think that it's good timing for me to remind myself that the work is not done, and that it won't ever be done for us, because every year we'll be reminded that what he went through. So digital storytelling, I didn't know anything about this until one Dan Fan Tam, who is part of the Hep B Minnesota, she told me about that, and we were like, sure, we would like to, but it felt really personal. But then my sister reminded me that we're really angry about this whole process, and let's go and share, so that one, we can use our anger in a positive way, and share, and maybe we can help prevent other families from going through this. So we signed up for that intensive 3-day procedure, and we didn't know what to expect, but it was a pretty amazing experience. They had us write our story. I think I had more than a page, and then we had to cut it all down so that it would be 2.5 minutes max, 2 minutes recorded. Best part of that time was to meet people at the center. There were people living with Hep B. There were people that have been hiding Hep B. There have been people that the stigma of Hep B have kept them in the shell. And as caregivers, it made me think, did my dad know about his Hep B status? Was he hiding it? Was he trying to protect us? And I didn't expect to learn about that weekend we were there in Berkeley. But I think our decision was right, because as I learned more during the 3 years my dad was dealing with it, I learned that a lot of people are prone to it, especially in our Southeast Asian community, and I educated myself quite a bit about it. And I realized there's such a big gap in what people don't know around this virus. So that made me really determined to do more around it. So right now I work at the health department in our cancer control section. But then again, it's around breast, cervical, and colon as always. But I made it my mission to make sure that the Hep B Minnesota group gets as much opportunity to get to the communities that we need to educate. So I partner with them around the Hmong community. We go to the churches where we're going to do, we were innovative by doing flu shot / Hep B / other cancers. I introduced them to our American Indian Cancer Foundation, just to know that that's also a community that have high Hep B, Hep C issues around liver cancer. We're trying to go to other areas, and so I know Dan Thum has gone to our Asian Indian temples and mosques and churches, and just really trying to reach out to as many. And so we're trying to share our contacts to make sure that they can come in to educate the community. But it's been a pretty powerful experience from what we've been through, and I think that the justB, for me, was justB there. For my sister, who was also there with me, hers was just be courageous. I think that the justB is just, just know about it. Whatever that just is, I'm still figuring it out. 1 year is still pretty fresh. I'm sure there's more lessons to be learned from what my dad went through and what we went through as caregivers. But I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be there and to share our story and to be able to make a difference, hopefully, in other people's lives by just talking about it and then sharing our experience.
Thank you, Di.
Go ahead, Rhea.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
I just want to add my thanks, and you're absolutely making a difference. So thank you for sharing that. The story, I know it's not an easy one to tell. So I will now pass it back to Rhea to hear from our next speaker.
Yes, and thank you again, Di. I just want to make sure, John, can you still hear us?
Sorry, Rhea. I had it on mute.
Okay, no, perfect. I just wanted to make sure before I started the video. But our next storyteller, John Ellis, is from Pensacola, Florida, and he participated in the second of our workshops this spring, which was held in Doylestown at the Hep B Foundation offices. So we'll play John's video real quick, and then we'll allow him a few minutes to speak as well.
I'm cycling in the middle of the afternoon. It's June in rural Georgia. Waves of heat rise from the tarry asphalt of the highway as semis roar past, my bike and I blowing like a leaf in the wind. The air is so thick you almost have to chew it before taking a breath. Salt from sweat stings my eyes, and I'm trying to distract myself from the hundreds of miles left to ride. I'm thinking about my 18th birthday, only a couple weeks away, and how so much can change in a short amount of time. Like when my mom took me to see the doctor a couple of years earlier. I was 16 and having stomach pains, so we waited what felt like an eternity in the small exam room. The high hum of the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Finally, the door swung open and the physician assistant entered.
We've done some blood work, Mr. Ellis. There may be some mistake, but you tested positive for hepatitis B.
I didn't even know what that meant, but my mom's reaction said it all. When I went back for more tests, my mom stayed in the waiting room so I wouldn't see her cry. Just like that, my life changed. I knew I had to prove to myself that I could be bigger than my diagnosis. I wrote to the Hepatitis B Foundation about organizing a charity bike ride to raise awareness and funding for research. So that summer, after my senior year, my best friend and I left from our high school with my mother and grandmother in a van driving along with us. Averaging 60 miles a day, it took us 3 weeks to travel the 1,200 miles from Pensacola, Florida to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. What we were doing was so much bigger than us. People I didn't even know called me. An elderly woman who was living with the disease. A father with a teenage daughter who was recently diagnosed. They told me how good it felt to know I was doing this, to know that there was hope for those living with hepatitis B. So I kept pedaling. Just be positive.
All right. Yeah, I love how that video ends on such a positive note. And John has been awesome as a volunteer and an advocate for the Hep B Foundation and for Hep B issues. So I'll turn it over to him now.
Yeah, thank you, Rhea. First off, I'm really excited to see the Hepatitis B Foundation sharing these stories. It's not an easy thing to do to share these kind of stories, but you know, for me, as a young person, I don't know, it seems odd to say that I was fortunate, but you know, hearing stories like Di's, I was in a sense fortunate to find out that I had hepatitis B at an early age. And initially it was, you know, stunning. I mean, I knew nothing about what it meant to have hepatitis B, but you know, to have a resource like the Hepatitis B Foundation, you know, being a millennial, I turned to the internet. You know, I tried to educate myself on what it meant to have hepatitis B, and you know, to have a resource like the Hepatitis B Foundation was just invaluable to me. So at 16, I get diagnosed, and initially, you know, I was very scared, of course. But then I don't know, I wasn't satisfied with just, you know, living with this diagnosis. So I reached out to the Hepatitis B Foundation with this sort of crazy idea to ride my bike across the country. And initially, the scale of the idea was, you know, just completely insane. Initially, I had proposed that I would ride my bike from Pensacola, which is in the panhandle of Florida. We've been in the news a lot lately with all these hurricanes, but I had proposed riding from Pensacola to Alaska. I just picked a place, you know, just as far away from Pensacola as I can imagine. And then after talking with the Hepatitis B Foundation, they kind of brought it back to center, and they suggested that I ride to Philadelphia. So that experience was really just a challenge for myself to obviously challenge myself physically, because I felt like, you know, being diagnosed with hepatitis B, it was almost, you know, being told that I would never be as active and healthy as other individuals. But also I wanted to use it as a means to bring awareness to hepatitis B. So yeah, I mean, from that experience, I've met a lot of people that, you know, have family members that are, you know, going through a similar experience, and it's been almost selfishly, it's been better for me just to have a better understanding of myself, and what it means to live with hepatitis B. But again, I'm so grateful for this kind of experience, to connect with others, and you know, to sort of share in the struggle, but also the positive nature of what can come out of an experience like this.
Great, John. Thank you so much, and to both of you for telling your stories and sharing the videos. So with that, would definitely like to open up for some questions or comments, and just want to remind everyone you can type in your questions or comments into the question box as part of the webinar. So while we wait for some of those, I thought I'd start off. I have a couple of questions for each of you. So starting with you, Diane, and then to John. So overall, what do you hope people take away from learning and watching and hearing your story, and what types of changes would you like to see in the hepatitis B fight as a result of the justB campaign? So we'll start with Di.
Thanks, John. I think for me, because the Hep B has a vaccine available and there's tests available, and then, you know, Hep B can be a chronic disease that if you take better care, if you just know your condition early on, you can be more aware of how your body is progressing. I just want people to know about it. I just want people to know if they have it or they don't have it. If they don't have it, definitely get themselves vaccinated. It's such a simple thing. Insurance covers it, and we have programs here that people who are uninsured can be covered as well. And then if you do have it, be aware that you can go in for the next time you go in for your annual. Ask, how is my liver doing? You know, it is one of the more important organs there, right next to the heart. I think it filters everything out to keep you healthy, and so there are mechanisms that that can find out about it, that can help you maintain healthy liver health for many years. if you know that you already have this condition, try to do. I always tell people do less damage if possible. So it's so preventable, and I hope that also that people think about the treatable part of it. I know my uncle. I didn't get a chance to share this, but my dad's younger brother in California found out earlier on that he had Hep B, and his wife over there, who was very active, she took him in and had him treated for interferon, and he no longer has it. I mean, it was bad. I mean, it was bad to the point where he said he felt half dead after the treatment. But if we had known, we would have encouraged my dad to go to the same thing. We wouldn't have just cluelessly walking around thinking that he's okay, that his tiredness, his fatigue was from diabetes or anything like that. So just know what it is. You have to be your own advocate, because the bigger society tends to be more involved or more pay attention to, again, the other cancers that I talk about, the breast, cervical, and colon. Those are the big three screenable ones. And more, I think people will be going into the lung cancer. But again, liver cancer is still not there, and it's on the rise. And one of the more awe-stalking thing that I learned several years ago is that we're doing such a good job with breast, cervical, and colon that the rates are actually going down. But the rates that are still continue to rise is Hep B, and then HIV in terms of HPV, the human papillomavirus around cervical cancer. So those two things are still going up, and yet Hep B still doesn't have his share of the limelight when it still continues to go up, and the other cancers still going down. So we need funding. We definitely need funding for more awareness. We need our politicians to put more money into just to share in the awareness that some of our communities that are immigrants are still facing this as a real life thing, and solution can be quite simple. It's just getting themselves tested.
Great, thank you. I agree with you. We need more funding, and certainly you're telling your story, particularly to your own elected representatives, is a powerful way of trying to get that change. So John, same question to you. What changes are you looking to see, and particularly through participating in this program?
So I think I'd just like to echo some of Di's statements. I mean, obviously with her background, it sounds like she's very in tune with, the community. And so from my perspective, I would just want to echo that and add that, I think in my community, a lot of people just assumed that hepatitis B wasn't an issue any longer. The vaccine came out. I remember growing up and having to go in 7th grade and get my booster shots, and the hepatitis B vaccine was a part of that series of vaccinations that I had to get. And unfortunately, I mean, between the time I was born and 7th grade when I got that vaccination, I had already contracted the virus. So in my situation, getting a vaccination doesn't do a whole lot if you've already contracted the virus. So I think certainly raising the awareness. I think a lot of people assume that there are certain races of people, like the Asian community, that is, it's more prevalent. So as a Caucasian person, it doesn't impact our community in the same way. So a lot of people assume that it's not an issue, and that's simply not the case. So I think bringing awareness to everyone is important. So certainly, sharing my story, I think in part, that's what I'm hoping to do.
Great, thank you. So just another reminder that folks can send in questions through the questions part of your webinar. And while we wait and see if any come in, I have a second question for both of our speakers. which is really around your experience with the justB workshop. If you can sort of talk about your experience with the workshop, what was it like for you, and maybe just a really quick story about the best part or even the hardest part of that process.
John, do you want to go first?
Yeah, certainly. I think the workshop for me was just it's obviously very emotional to have that level of sharing amongst people who had been impacted one way or another. I was very surprised to see other young people at the workshop. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's an odd thing to say, but to connect with other young people that had a similar experience as me was just very eye-opening. And so overall, it was an incredible experience to connect, to be able to share and share those emotions really with other people who understood some of the feelings that you have as someone with hepatitis B. So overall, a great experience. And I think, with the justB campaign, I think it gives us an opportunity to have that conversation at an even bigger level, which I think is important.
So for me, Ryan, the 3-day weekend that we were there, I don't know how many tissue I went through. It was still really raw for us, but I felt that it was healing also, because hepatitis B is such a stigma in our Asian community, and especially in the Vietnamese community. It's such a private thing. Like our family, we don't share a lot, and for us, I almost like we were rebelling. We were there and we were allowed to rebel, to talk about what was going on with our family and the loss that we had just experienced, and it was healing for us. Like like John said, I met some people that are living with it, and I look at them with the same really love that I would have for my dad if he had told us that he had it earlier, and it would have been nothing for us to say, let's go get the MRI, let's go get the CT, this. So I can only guess what my dad was thinking when I'm not sure whether the doctor ever shared it with him, if he actually understood what he had, of why he was refusing to even get a simple MRI. And so those things, I asked people, like, what, that was my first thing, is what was going on in your mind when you were told that you had hepatitis B, or or you need to get yourself further testing, because we never really, my dad still didn't really tell us of what was going on. So I learned from my fellow participants that weekend what they felt, and it just made me feel even worse that we weren't there for our dad, because we weren't in the know. But the whole 3 days, able to put on paper, and then have the staff there at the Story Center help us really concentrate down to 2.5 minutes. I didn't think was possible. I mean, our story, our life, our 3 year in 2.5 minutes. I was just thinking, how is that possible? But they did a great job. They were compassionate when we had to take some time off just to dry our eyes. They knew how to help us sort of voice our experience in a way where it was authentic, and they were very patient with us, as we're all very regular people, not knowing how to do digital storytelling. That was my first introduction to it, and the technology. It was very well managed. It was very well facilitated. The Happy group that was there took very good care of us. Again, I had a great experience, and I have been telling my friends in the Hmong community that they should think about sharing their experience, so that the Hmong community, which is very large here in Minnesota, could benefit from that. Because I think a story in your own language, the people that look like you, people that maybe have similar walks of life, makes a huge difference. and that might be the decision where people go and get themselves tested, or go home and share and ask their parents, hey, have you, do you know if you have this or not? Do we have this in our family? So I'm hoping that there will be future sessions where we can include other groups that have stories to share as well.
Great, thanks so much. I'm going to turn it over to Rhea to see if we have some questions from participants.
Sure. We have one question for Di. So you mentioned in your story about how you took off 3 years to care for your dad, and that being a caregiver for people struggling with hepatitis B or liver cancer can be very, we know the challenges can be tough, especially as you said, when there are limited resources about that specific disease. So what resources do you wish you'd had at that time when you were caring for your father? Or if you have any recommendations or want to talk about that?
Right. I was very fortunate to have my sister still work. And she, after I spent through my savings, she was the one who stepped in to help, with the bills. And I pretty much, being at home, I didn't have to go out as much. I didn't have work meetings. I didn't have a lot of where my money was being spent on. But without my family, I don't know if I could have stayed home for 3 years with my dad. And as a caregiver, I was lucky to have my mom there too. So when I need a break, I could go for a walk, or if I needed to go and shower, she could be there. Because my dad, he would never complain, never. And they would poke at him, and they would take blood from him multiple times, and then someone would come in and try to take blood again. When someone just came in, he wouldn't say anything. He was just he was like probably the most compliant patient the doctors have ever said they have ever experienced. But because of that, we had to make sure we were the protectors even more. It was hard. I'll tell you, as caregiver, it was hard. I went to online to try to read more of what other people went through, what other resources there were, other support groups. There were none. Not in Minnesota. There were none for Vietnamese hepatitis. I wanted to, at least for my mom, be able to join a group so she could, in a way, grieve and be able to share. I couldn't find any for her. And for me, I could talk to my friends about it. But my mom's generation, she didn't talk a lot with her family. So it was a hard 3 years, and we struggled with that. But again, I would never trade that for anything. If I'd known that, even for our family, we'd known that my dad would pass away in October, we might have made some other decisions around his care that could at least alleviate some of his pain. But for our family was so important that the financial side of it, burden, as real as it was, we never made that the center of, or at least we never really let my dad worry about that. But there are resources, like in Minnesota, there is an Angel Foundation that could help people find some money to pay for utility bills if you're struggling with cancer. Then there are other support groups, like I went to the American Cancer Society. So if that's where I used to work, so I used to think I would have these resources, but I struggled to find those sites as well. And then when we were farther away from our house for treatment, I made sure I looked for the Hope Lodge. So if anyone who is dealing with that can stay at the Hope Lodge, but we were never able to, because the one that we stayed at in Rochester was always booked. But we found guest house, other areas. So I would say be innovative and keep searching and keep asking about it. Unfortunately, we did not get a care coordinator, and that's what people should connect with. And we might not have had to struggle as much if we had more of that. But again, this is the first experience in our family, and we did the best that we could with it. So,
thank you. Yeah. I think I have one more question, and this one is for John. I think so you have been seems pretty open about your diagnosis, and I think for you, being able to do something to show that you're bigger than your diagnosis and to be able to talk about the disease openly has been such a great thing for you. And so I guess if you have any other final comments on how you think storytelling can really help and support people living with hepatitis or with other disease, how, like, the role that it plays in helping you stay hopeful and positive about that condition, about their condition.
Yeah, I guess for me, I've found that by being very open and honest about my condition, you know, in some ways it makes you vulnerable, I guess, especially as, you know, a kid in high school. That's not something that, you know, a lot of 16, 17-year-olds understand, but certainly as I get older, a lot of people can connect with that, because I think, you know, most people, you know, they have a family member that's been sick in some form or fashion. Like Di was saying, you know, a lot of people, they can connect with this idea because they have a family member that maybe they've had heart disease or cancer or something like that. So really to share my story with, you know, my diagnosis, it's allowed me to connect with other people that, you know, maybe they don't necessarily understand hepatitis B, but they do understand, you know, what it means to have someone close to you who has an illness. So having that conversation with people, it changes, I guess, the discussion, and you're able to kind of build, you know, build a conversation around how to best overcome that. And I think, you know, one way that I've always been able to do that is to just try to find the bright side, you know, to turn an illness into a bike ride, or even now with the justB campaign, to turn our experiences into stories that, you know, we can recognize people like Di's father, who, you know, lived with an illness but, you know, had such a tremendous impact on his family. I mean, that kind of stuff is incredibly inspiring to me. So.
Well, thank you for sharing, to both of you. Thank you for sharing your stories and for joining the webinar today. I'll just say, as for me as a participant or observer at the workshops, it was really eye-opening and meaningful for all of us, the staff and the Story Center facilitators, who also at the time were not as familiar with hepatitis B before they did these workshops for us. All of us felt that we learned so much in a short amount of time from everybody, and that it was really, like Di said, a healing experience for a lot of people, or therapeutic to just talk about it with other people. And just, even if it was the first time that you were talking about it, and maybe the last time, that for some people, maybe they haven't been as open since the workshops, at least there was that space during that time to really feel connected to other people and to feel supported. And so we're really grateful that you guys both participated. We don't have any more questions, but there was another comment that just is thanking both of you for sharing your experiences and for being open about them. But I think that's all for questions that we have. So I'll let Ryan, if you have final comments for closing, take it from here.
Sure, absolutely. Well, again, thank you to our speakers, again, for taking time to share your stories, and for everybody to learn more about the justB program. One of my hopes from this webinar was for participants to learn about the program and think about ways, if you are with an organization and run a program, think about ways to incorporate some pieces and really make sure that the voices of people living with hepatitis B and C, depending on who's out there listening, are heard and elevated and supported. So I also want to thank Rhea again for all of her work putting this webinar together with us, and for Hepatitis B Foundation for co-sponsoring, co-hosting. Also want to note that the archive and recording will be available, and we'll make sure that that information is sent out, and you can share that to others who weren't able to be on today. And also, when you close the webinar, you will receive a brief survey, which we encourage you to complete to help us with planning future webinars. So thank you again, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you, Rhea. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.